runaway snake was found in the plane's cargo hold. The snake was found as passengers were boarding a Virgin Australia flight at Melbourne Airport. One snake catcher said the snake turned out to be a harmless 60-centimeter green tree snake. Breaking news at townhall.com. There's been a new addition to the FBI's 10 most wanted list.
In Texas, the mother of a Tarrant County boy missing for more than 2 years now has been added to the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. Cindy Rodriguez Singh is charged with capital murder in the disappearance of Noel Alvarez, who is presumed dead, although no body has been found. The 6-year-old with special needs was last seen at his home in late 2022. Investigators interviewed Rodriguez Singh in March of 23 when they say she lied, saying the boy was with his biological father in Mexico. 2 days later, the woman, her husband, and 6 other kids boarded a flight for India without the missing boy. There is now a $250,000 reward for information leading to her arrest and conviction. Tasha Stevens reporting.
Used car prices climbing again. According to Edmunds, a 3-year-old vehicle will now sell for more than $30,000. That's on average. More on these stories at townhall.com. I'm John.
Number one for live and local
conservative talk.
I've been a registered Democrat for 28 years.
I'm really glad you're talking about this.
You gotta love these idiots out here. They think we're all stupid, I guess.
news, analysis, opinion.
Totally agree on that.
I disagree with you.
It's over.
Very upset.
Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you for taking my call. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Wanted to ask you really quick. Is there room on the bandwagon for me?
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL. This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Stifel, serving investors for over 130 years. Contact your Stifel financial advisor at stifel.com. That's STIFEL.com.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime.
Peace.
Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace
through strength.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says tonight President Trump and the U.S. acted with a lot of strength.
It's not a sentiment that is held by all.
Without congressional approval is a clear violation of the Constitution.
Follow what happens next right here.
The next move is Iran.
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL. From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
Should be a nice evening, a little on the warm side, but not overly muggy. The low temperatures overnight dipping down into the upper 60s to near 70 degrees in the metro area. Sunshine again tomorrow, a little bit more humid, a little warmer, high up to about 92, the heat index 94. On the 4th of July, our high temperature will make it up to about 94 degrees with a heat index near 99. And for now, it looks like we don't expect any rain. I'm KMOB First Alert meteorologist Kent Earhart.
Number one for live and local
conservative talk.
You can say he's fat.
I know for a fact.
It's just about time.
It's not now. When?
Oh, there's just so much to say and not enough time to say it or do it.
I'm sorry. This is our country. This is the country that you and I love.
I'm kind of not surprised.
Man, that's what they need.
Very upset.
A lot of fear.
I agree with that, and well, who couldn't agree with it? It's a fact.
101.9 and 94.1
St. Louis is number one for conservative talk.
News Talk STL.
We'll prevail.
This hour of Colombo and Company brought to you by Gutter Pros. Water goes where we tell it. Call 314-656-7195 or visit them at gutterpros.com. Because truth matters.
Let's speak that truth.
Because understanding matters.
Let's break this down.
With all that's happening.
And it's happening a lot faster.
What matters most is
The only question that matters here.
Are you informed?
Important issues that are facing this country.
Depend on us.
The latest events.
The information you need.
Here are the facts.
When you need it.
We always have great conversations.
You guys have a great radio station.
101.9 and 94.1 News Talk STL.
The time to rise has been engaged. We're better, best to rearrange. I'm talking here to me alone. I listen to the finest work song, the finest hour.
Hello and welcome to Wednesday afternoon on Colombo and Company on 101.9, 94.1 News Talk STL. I'm Tony Colombo here in studio with producer Ashlyn. And yes, we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to dig into some of the local news and politics with our Missouri political insider, Rodney Boyd, in just about 10 minutes from now. So looking forward to that. Danny Define, News Talk STL contributor, joining us a little bit later on this hour. In the 3 o'clock hour, we're going to open up Close's cabinet today, this week, with special guest JC Corcoran from, of course, JC's Wayback Machine, which you can hear every weekend here on News Talk STL. Mark is unable to join us today, so JC will be filling in for Mark Close, and we're going to have some fun when we open up Close's cabinet at 3 o'clock. And yes, we're going to talk about the big, beautiful bill. We're going to talk about the situation continuing to escalate between ICE and local officials in California, specifically in LA. As I mentioned, we're going to dig into all the, Missouri local news and politics as we go through the afternoon. But we're going to start with P. Diddy. This is a case, an issue, a story that I have not talked about. Maybe just a couple of references here and there over the last couple of months as this has been in the news and has been developing. But I've been watching it, off the air, not as closely as some other recent cases like the Johnny Depp case, that we were really into for a while there. Not that closely, but close enough to know, what's going on. And one of the reasons that I didn't talk a whole lot about it is because I was waiting for it to be over and then to discuss, what happened. And now we're here, but I'm surprised, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised. The verdict is in, and you may have seen some headlines out there about how P. Diddy is facing up to 20 years in prison for being found guilty on a couple of the charges that he was given. That is technically true, but it does not tell the real story of what happened. P. Diddy was found not guilty on by far the two biggest charges. There was 5 charges against him: the racketeering, the RICO charge, the sex trafficking charge. That's specifically regarding his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, who's been all over the news and, a central part of this case, if you've been watching him. Those counts, which were count 1 and 2, he was found not guilty on. And that's where all of the major prison time and what would have been, a real jail sentence could have happened for Sean Combs, P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, whatever you want to call him. He was found guilty on 2 counts of prostitution, transportation across state lines, the Mann Act. And he was found guilty on another sex trafficking charge. And again, he technically now faces up to 20 years in prison if he gets the max on those sex trafficking charges, but nobody is expecting that. In fact, when the verdict was read, there's no cameras in the in the courtroom for this case, so there's no video. We haven't been able to see the videos of all of this, and I don't know what it is about. Courtroom artists. It always just looks so bizarre to me. So that's all we've had to go on as far as visuals are concerned. But he reportedly, P. Diddy stood and clapped after this verdict was read, and his supporters and family that were in the courtroom also erupted in cheers. So this was not the deliverance of justice against P. Diddy that you may think if you look at just some of the headlines and haven't been following this story and see that he was found guilty on a couple of sex trafficking charges and could get 20 years if he gets the max. Here's how good of a verdict it was for P. Diddy. Outside the courthouse, a woman took off her clothes while reportedly up to 50 or 60 people were all filming her with her phone, and a man sprayed baby oil onto her while the crowd cheered. Of course, baby oil has played a major role, been a part of the central part of the conversation about P. Diddy and his parties and his alleged crimes. So that's why that is, that's why we've got the baby oil happening. So we've got people celebrating, taking their clothes off, spraying baby oil outside, P. Diddy standing and clapping in the courtroom. The defense moved for an immediate release pending his sentencing proceeding. Haven't seen what the decision has been made on that yet. I don't believe he's been released at this point. Again, the RICO and the human trafficking charges, those could have been 20 years each. And that's really where the bulk of the sentencing, the jail time that P. Diddy could have faced for this, and he was found not guilty on those charges. The charges of sex trafficking, 10 years apiece, is the maximum, but most legal experts are expecting a sentence between 1 and 3 years. And most of the opinions that I've read this afternoon, the legal experts that have been reacting to this have said that he'll be home by Christmas. So not a whole lot of justice if you believe that P. Diddy is guilty of all of the things that he has been accused of. And there seemed to be a mountain of evidence to prove all of those things. And I think it goes to a larger story. And this is something that we'll talk to, people like Susie Moore and Nick Schroer, the attorneys. Tim Jones might have some thoughts on this a little bit later on this afternoon. People with a legal background, attorneys that know more about the law and how all of this works than I do. But to me, this just completely reeks of the wealth privilege in America, and how if you have the money, and certainly the fame doesn't, that doesn't hurt you much. That doesn't hurt you either in this regard. But if you have the money and then also the fame alongside of that, then you're just playing by a different set of rules than the rest of us. So again, I didn't watch this case as, like a hawk every single day, but it's pretty obvious with just the surface level of evidence that's out there. And if you look and you watch the reaction, the legal experts that have been covering this, a lot of blame is being laid at the feet of the prosecution, the attorneys in the case. Some people are saying that they didn't deliver the case properly. Others are just saying that this is wealth privilege in America at its finest. There's all kinds of excuses being thrown around, but very few of them are, the excuses that he didn't do it. Most of it is explanations on why he got away with it. So, pretty amazing verdict, actually. It looked like this was pretty open and shut. It looked like they had the evidence in this case, but again, found guilty on 3 of the 5 charges, but not the 2 most serious. P. Diddy faces a maximum of 20 years in prison, but most legal experts say more like 1 to 3. He's also got time served from being in jail during this process and during the trial and all of that. And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the legal experts are predicting that he will be home by Christmas. Just wow. And again, I'm sure we'll talk more about this. And I think I think it sparks a larger conversation about wealth privilege in America. We may talk a little bit about this case just from that aspect with Rodney Boyd, our Missouri political insider. He is going to join us in just a moment. And we are going to get back into some of the headlines of the day, specifically an update on some local news and politics, including Governor Kehoe vetoing approximately $300 million in earmarks in the Missouri budget earlier this week. We'll explain some of those details and the reaction to it, and Rodney Boyd will definitely be able to help explain that situation and more next here on Colombo and Company.
Working all week, 9 to 5 for my money. So when the weekend comes, I go get live with the.
Follow us on Rumble at News Talk STL. Live and local.
Well, here's what's on my mind. I think I got the solution to immigration.
News Talk STL. News, analysis, opinion.
Grasser Electric is the team to call if you are having any electrical issues in your home or business, or if you have a project coming up that requires, electric installation or electric being moved around, whatever it may be. I can speak to from personal experience at how good the techs are from Grasser Electric. We found Grasser a few years ago when we moved into our new home and almost immediately needed their help because, when you're moving into a new home, you want to make that transition from, the home of the people that owned it before to yours. So we were moving around some light fixtures and things like that pretty early on. And then over the last few years, after those first great experiences, have relied on Grasser for other services as well. So from that personal experience, I can tell you that these guys are the best. They are exactly the kind of team that you want to have in your home working on something as critical as your electrical needs. You don't want to mess around with something like that. You want somebody that does a great job, somebody that you could trust to, accurately and honestly explain to you what's going on and give you a very fair price, very good price when it comes to whatever your needs are, whether you're having a problem or, again, are planning a project. Grasser specializes in all electrical needs, ranging from large-scale commercial projects all the way down to simple home service needs like replacing a bad light switch. They also offer free quotes for new projects. So if you have an electrical problem or just need a quote for new work, call Grasser Electric now. Learn all about Grasser and contact them by going to the website grasserelectric.com.
Life's legal challenges deserve experienced representation. For over 15 years, Cole Combs Attorney at Law has been serving St. Charles and surrounding counties with comprehensive legal expertise. From tax preparation and estate planning to family law and criminal defense, Cole delivers personalized solutions for your unique situation. You have traffic tickets, need a business formation, real estate matters, one call will handle it all. Cole O. Combs Attorney at Law. Call 636-949-0010, extension 3 today, or visit colecombs-law.com.
Hey, Jamie Allman here for the great Window World. Just over the last 20 years of Window World being in St. Louis, they've improved the look and thermal efficiency of more than 76,000 customers in St. Louis. Plus, Window World windows come with a lifetime warranty that covers all parts, glass breakage, and labor. And now Window World is now offering 36 months, same as cash financing, with approved credit. Call them today at 314-993-1800, 314-993-1800.
I'm Dr. TJ, owner of the Institute of Natural Health, co-owner of Optimal Nutraceuticals, and the host of Wellness One. Wellness One is designed to cut through the nonsense and provide you common sense, science-based information regarding health and wellness. On the show, we discuss topics like thyroid health, gut health, hormone optimization, and many others. Our show airs Saturdays at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. and Sundays at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. right here on Newstalk STL. And you can visit us at inhstl.com. That's inhstl.com.
On the next
Larry Connors, USA.
Trump's big, beautiful bill gets through the Senate, back to the House. How fast can they get it to his desk?
Larry Connors, USA. Now, weeknights 6 until 8 on News Talk STL.
Reach out, touch faith.
Welcome back to Colombo and Company on 101.9 94.1 News Talk STL. Going to be joined by News Talk STL contributor Danny Define in just about 15 minutes from now. But right now, joining us on the line, as he does every Wednesday afternoon, our Missouri political insider, the great Rodney Boyd, is with us. Rodney, hope you are well this afternoon. There's lots to talk about, both locally and I want to rely on your legal background a little bit for something that you probably don't expect me to ask you about. But thanks for joining us as always, my friend.
That's what makes live radio exciting: the unexpected questions and the unexpected answers. So yes, let's jump in, man. I know our time's always limited. Let's jump right in.
So I don't know if you've cared enough to pay attention to the P. Diddy trial, and you don't need to answer the question that I'm about to ask, because what I think it has done with this verdict that was read today or late yesterday is bring up the larger question or concern that's been around for ages about the wealth and fame, privilege in the justice system. So just really quick, and I just talked about this in the last segment, so just to give a quick recap of that, P. Diddy was found guilty on 2 of the 5 charges, or 3 of the 5 charges against him today. But 2 of the 2 charges that he was found not guilty on were the big ones: the human trafficking and the RICO charge. And this has caught a lot of people off guard. And while there are headlines saying that, he could still face up to 10 years in prison if he gets the max on these other charges, most legal experts are saying more like 1 to 3. And with time served, he'll probably be home by Christmas. It was such a good verdict for him that reportedly he stood and clapped in the courtroom after it was delivered. And I just reported on, listen to this. Apparently a woman outside, because there's no cameras anywhere. So there's only reporting on this, but outside the courtroom when it was read, his supporters outside the courtroom went crazy. And one woman took off her clothes while a man sprayed her with baby oil. Like that's the level that's the level of celebration. So anybody that's reading the headlines and are like, oh, P. Diddy could go to jail for up to 20 years, and are thinking like justice was served. No, it was not. This was a very positive ruling for P. Diddy. And it just, it brings up the frustration, Rodney, and you would know with your legal background, how real is it? Is the wealth and or fame privilege in America when it comes to our justice system? Because this one seemed like a slam dunk. And again, we see another famous person probably not being held to the account that they should have been in the legal system.
So let me start by saying I got to be fully transparent with you on this one. I didn't follow the trial.
Sure, no.
I didn't.
Totally understand.
I saw an occasional headline.
Mm-hmm.
I initially, when the arrest and the no bond, like what jumped out at me was the fact that for over almost a year, the court refused to allow a bond, even a $50 million cash bond, right? Which would have been significant. So that just made me think that the gravity of the charges was so severe that there would probably be not just, a lot of assassination, but I thought this would have a broader reach. Racketeering, RICO, those charges, trafficking, the word trafficking, it's usually not the case when those charges are brought, usually, that it's one person.
Right.
Usually when you're in a RICO racketeering environment, the prosecution has a number of individuals in their crosshairs, and they usually want to go after one of the most viable people because that person then brings potential prosecutions for others into focus, right?
Yeah.
What was always odd to me was that there was never another person that we were aware of that was arrested or talked about or arraigned. So I kept wondering in the back of my mind, when do other shoes drop? Like if Sean Combs was sex trafficking, he wasn't a lone wolf.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
There would have to be collaborators.
Subordinates.
If there were RICO charges, where are the other participants? And because they never, ever manifested in this trial, I was always skeptical about, well, how do you convict one participant in what usually is tied to a conspiracy collaborative effort? And even to this day, we've never even heard another name. So if you think about that, now if I'm on the jury and I got a pretty good defense attorney where the money does come in, I mean, he hired the best lawyers you could hire. I think I wasn't surprised that on those two charges where they're usually co-conspirators, he was acquitted.
Mm-hmm.
And on the charges where you could lay blame just solely on him, he was found guilty. What I'll never know, what you'll never know, is why the prosecution presented the case the way they did. Because you made it almost, in hindsight now, you've made it almost impossible for a jury to just convict one person for something that clearly should have encompassed multiple people.
Yeah, you
So
know
I'm
what?
not surprised at the verdict.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up. And I need to correct myself. There was 5 charges. I said he was found guilty on 3. I had that flip. He was found guilty on 2. He was found not guilty on 3. The 2 that he was found guilty on are the 2 Mann Act, transportation, prostitution charges that technically carry a max of 10 each, but again, not expected to be that much. But what you just said, what you just laid out there, Rodney, is exactly what I have seen a lot of the legal experts say after this verdict came out, in that they're blaming the prosecution for this more than any type of like, oh yeah, justice was served here. A lot of the opinions are that I've been reading are he got away with it, and the prosecution did a poor job with either charges or the way that the case was presented. So more of a more responsibility on the lawyers than it being the truth.
One other headline that I did see that caught my attention was when the prosecution rested their case, the defense basically rested its case. Meaning they presented no witnesses, no exculpatory witnesses, no evidence, no anything. And I remember telling my wife, I said, when in a case of this magnitude, the defense doesn't present any evidence, they have been convinced significantly that the prosecution's case is utterly weak, and that they've been able to do enough to win just on their rebuttal of the prosecution's witnesses. I said, so it's interesting that they are willing to bet Sean Combs' fate on their cross-examinations and what they've been able to do to sort of tear down the prosecution's case without even thinking or advancing any arguments through a defense case. So at that point, I said to my wife, I said, I don't know what's going to happen, but either his attorneys are committing malpractice and maybe we'll end up being charged with that, or this prosecution's case was so unconvincing of them that they're willing to gamble that they can win just based on the prosecution's case, which in effect, on the significant charges that you just highlighted, they did prevail.
So I totally agree with that, and especially when it comes to the RICO, to the racketeering charges. However, the human trafficking charge, like they gave his ex-girlfriend Casey Ventura, they believed her to a point because they found him guilty of the Mann Act, but not the sex trafficking with her. That one is the one that I think is the most miscarriage of justice here, because I think there was a lot of evidence that would have supported that sex trafficking charge more than just the transportation charge that he was found guilty of. But again, I don't want to. There's a couple other stories I want to talk to you about, Rodney. But I wanted to big picture this for people that are frustrated that they see all of this evidence and these horrible videos of of him assaulting his ex-girlfriend in hallways and hotels and things like that. And now he's, celebrating a very positive verdict for him. You've got that, you can go, you can go down the list forever. You've got Harvey Weinstein, who's still, out there, not being held to account. You've got, Hillary Clinton. You've got Dan Schneider, the old Nickelodeon producer that was so gross. And, like all of these rich and famous people, it's been going on forever, just seem to get away with more than the average person. Is that just a money thing? Is that just, if you can afford the best of the best, you can manipulate the system better than the average person?
Look, there is no doubt that well-resourced defendants will fare much better in our judicial system than people that don't have those resources. And the quintessential, the archaic example in our lifetime, depending on how old you are listening to the show, is the O.J. Simpson trial.
Yeah.
It set the standard that if you have enough resources to hire the best lawyers, to overpower or to maneuver the prosecution, you're going to have a pretty good shot in the criminal justice courts. That's different than the civil courts. As we saw, Combs paid substantially in the civil courts. I think he paid the Cassie lady $30 million, right?
Yeah.
That's a different court system.
Yeah.
But in the system where the government has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, you can spend a lot of money and make that doubt bar too high. And I think that's what you see with people that have uber wealth. They're able to, and I think you see the prosecutions move in a different way with those folks because they want to be very careful that they don't overreach. One simple thing would have been, what would have happened in this situation if they would have charged 2 or 3 other people around Mr. Combs and tried them first and got a conviction?
Yeah.
Right? Then it's a different scenario, but none of that happened. So there's a different experience in our judicial system. And look, I was a young prosecutor in the late 90s, and I got to tell you something. People who came into court with no lawyer, it was a much different experience than people who came into court with the Scott Rosenblum, right? With the best criminal defense attorney in town. That's just a reflection of what resources can do, even in our justice is blind. I guess every now and then the blind slips a little bit.
Yeah.
She peeks to see.
She peeks.
Lady Justice peeks to see who's representing you.
Yeah.
But that's a part of our system. And I think, quite honestly, I don't think it's going to change. Those who have exorbitant resources will have a better shot at quote unquote justice than those that don't have those resources.
Well, again, Rodney, just really appreciate this is not our normal conversation, but with your legal background, I wanted to get your thoughts on this story. So I definitely appreciate that. We got a couple minutes left here with Missouri political insider Rodney Boyd. Big story of the week when it comes to Missouri politics, at least, is Governor Kehoe vetoing $300 million in earmarks out of the state budget earlier this week. Vetoed more than 200 earmarks from the budget. Can you? We only got a couple minutes left here. Can you give us the basic version of what the governor did with this budget and its possible impact?
I think the basic version is the governor's got a mandate, just like the legislature, to pass and sign a balanced budget. And part of the power that we, the people of Missouri, give our governor is something called line item veto. So, when you start the budget, the governor presents a budget to the legislature, in December, basically, and things get added to that budget. Those, what you call earmarks, they get added by House members, they get added by Senate members. At the end of that process, they take that total package, if you will, of the budget that the governor sent, things that they took out, things they put in, they push it back over to the governor, and they say, all right, now do your job, balance it. So I think one of the things, and remember, this is Mike Kehoe, Governor Kehoe, this is his first budget that he's ever had to do this. He's been lieutenant governor, but that's not a function of lieutenant governor. So I think what happened is from where I could see, the governor got the budget staff sat down and they made recommendations to the governor for 2 purposes. 1, to balance the budget, but for 2, to what they call preserve a bottom line, some amount of money that would stay in the coffers for like a rainy day type deal, right? And not spend more than people thought was prudent to protect us from unseen upcoming events like more tornadoes or whatever, right? The other thing that happened is, this is a part of this. After the budget was practically done, we found ourselves adding some significant new bottom line items to the budget. The Royals and Chiefs money, but also the $100 million that wasn't allocated during the budget process for tornado relief. So all these pressure points, compressed together to say to the governor's office, you got to figure out a way to balance the budget and to have some money on the bottom line. I have heard from people from all over the region who are very disappointed and upset about what they believe were essential programs that were cut on Monday. People are trying to scramble to figure out what to do. It's a very real reality. But I think that, this is something that we're all going to grapple with because the budget of Missouri is still going to be challenged next fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not the budget expert. I'm not in the weeds. What I know is these recommendations came. The governor studied them. A lot of people thought he was going to sign the budget on Friday the 27th. It's kind of told me when he waited until late on Monday that they were really taking a look. His team was really taking a look at these proposed cuts, and that they probably didn't take it lightly. But this is the reality. I mean, this is what happens when you're trying to balance this budget and have whatever you call on the bottom line. And there are a lot of frustrated people, senators and reps, and people throughout the state that specific projects were cut. And you're going to hear more about that as we gear up for next year.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, the budget next year is not going to be any better than it was this year.
Well, we're going to continue. We're digging into this as well. And, some of those specific things that were cut and some of the reaction to it, we'll continue to cover and inform you about. We'll continue the conversation tomorrow with Missouri State Representative Justin Sparks. And, of course, every week also with Missouri political insider Rodney Boyd. Rodney, really appreciate your time as always, my friend. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Tony.
You bet. Awesome stuff there from Rodney Boyd. All right, we are going to jump back into some of the national stories of the day and international stories. The latest in the back and forth between Los Angeles and ICE. We'll get you updated on that. We've also got a report out about Mexican citizens and the Mexican business owners on the Mexican side of the southern border, and their reaction and how much their life has changed since Trump took office. And, that flood of people crossing the border on a daily basis has come nearly to a complete stop. Very interesting to get the thoughts and stories from the other side of the border. So we will do all of that next, and we'll be joined by Danny Define, News Talk STL contributor, next here on Colombo and Company.
Someone to be our friend, someone who's there.
No big old corporate lib AM station telling us what to say here. Conservative talk for St. Louis. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
Concerned about the condition of your windows driving up your energy bills? I was too. It's only called STL Windows and Doors. Call today for your free in-home estimate and start saving tomorrow. 314-277-5952 or stlwindowsanddoors.com.
This is Tony Colombo, and my favorite Capriati sandwich is the cheesesteak made with American Wagyu beef from Snake River Farms, and you have to include a side of their amazing fries. I love Capriati's, and you will too.
Open 9 to 9 daily on Manchester at McKnight in Rock Hill.
Looking to celebrate the 4th of July with a bang? Then look no further than Powder Monkey Fireworks in Walden Springs. We've got bottle rockets, fountains, cakes, mortars. Our selection is endless with low prices and no gimmicks. We will not be undersold. Our friendly, knowledgeable staff will help you choose the perfect fireworks to make your holiday unforgettable. You'll go bananas at Powder Monkey. Don't want to fight the crowds? Order online at powdermonkeyfireworks.com. Powder Monkey Fireworks in Walden Springs.
This hour of Colombo and Company brought to you by Gutter Pros. Water goes where we tell it. Call 314-656-7195 or visit them at gutterpros.com.
Nothing seems to kill me.
Welcome back to Colombo and Company on 1019-94.1 News Talk STL. Great conversation there with Missouri political insider Rodney Boyd. And now we are joined by News Talk STL contributor Danny Define is on the line with us. Danny, thanks for your time. As always, my friend, I don't know if you were one of the people spraying baby oil outside the courtroom in New York after the Diddy verdict, but thanks for finding a quiet place to make a phone call. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, that's really not my scene, Tony. I think we should probably look into all the people that were celebrating that and maybe round them up and put them in the alligator Alcatraz.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Right? Yeah. I mean, just what a scene. Apparently, because the cameras were banned from the courtroom and right outside the courtroom, so all we can go on is reports. I'm sure we're going to start seeing those YouTube videos and TikTok videos, because apparently there were dozens and dozens of people filming the scene there outside the courtroom as women were taking their clothes off and baby oil was being sprayed. And I mean, just wow.
It goes to show you, Tony, if you have money and you have friends in high places, you have a little bit more of leniency when it comes to the rule of law.
Yeah, it's a little
different.
different.
The average citizen.
Yeah, a little different set of rules for sure. We were just talking about all that with Rodney Boyd. I recommend, if anybody missed that conversation, go back and check it out on the podcast. You mentioned alligator Alcatraz. Let's just start right there. This was one of my favorite stories of the week. On Monday, when we first reported about it, and we were reporting that the president was going to be visiting on Tuesday. I was saying, this is going to be great when Donald Trump gets there, and I can't wait to hear what he says. And then he delivered, certainly, with all of his comments yesterday from this new immigration detention facility. What do you think, Danny, of alligator Alcatraz?
Yeah, well, Tony, we spoke about, I think this was earlier in the year, back in January, about Donald Trump reviving the original Alcatraz off the coast of San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have alligator Alcatraz on my bingo card. I think I first heard about it maybe like 4 or 5 weeks ago. And yes, I did watch the press conference. And of course, Trump down there in Florida, where he has his, dual residency, and he has the giant Gulf of America MAGA hat on. Did you see that?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Yeah, it is incredible. I mean, I'm sure you've already seen this because they made this update months ago. But if you go to your Google Maps, if you go to Apple Maps,
mm-hmm.
I was on a plane a couple weeks ago, and I was just looking at the flight map. And yeah, even on my United flight, it says Gulf of America right there. So,
mm-hmm.
It's a hey, if we can use our natural resources and, like these massive alligators and pythons and water moccasins, if we can use the resources around us and, as long as the animals are protected, that's all I care about. I don't care about the people that are being detained there because they're criminals and they deserve to be there. But it's quite the concept, isn't it? So that was interesting, seeing the opening of alligator Alcatraz.
Yeah. You mentioned Google Earth, and I think this is I think this would be amazing to some people. If you're not super familiar with just how vast and large the Florida Everglades are, if you go and you look at that facility it used to be an airport. It's now been, transformed into this huge detention center for illegal aliens. If you go and you look on Google Maps and you just zoom out a little bit, I mean, it looks like the facility itself, which is a big facility, holds thousands of people. It looks like a little speck of dust in the middle of nothing. I mean, it is truly. If you don't realize, just how vast the Everglades are, you think to yourself, oh, they're not that far away from civilization or cities no, this is an isolated facility miles and miles away from anything, besides the alligators and the swamp and everything else. I mean, this is an intimidating place to be sent to, for sure.
Yeah.
And that was on purpose, obviously. So it's doing its job.
Exactly. And I like this, Tony, better than the idea. I know a lot of conservatives were cheering this on when Governor Abbott, and I believe DeSantis was another one that was under the Biden administration, flying the illegals up to Martha's Vineyard and some of those, Nantucket, where a lot of these high profile politicians live, which I get the messaging there. I totally understand the point that they're trying to make. Hey, now you have this in your backyard, so deal with it. But like I said on your show last week, kind of like the conservatives that were saying, oh, these riots in Los Angeles and San Francisco and Chicago, those people are getting what they deserve. Just let those cities burn down. I as an American, I want to see those cities. I don't want to just cast them aside and say, well, they're a lost cause. They get what they voted for. So in a case like this, I'm glad that they found a nice spot in the middle of Florida, far away from civilization, and they can open it up. Yeah, I believe it's 5,000 prisoners that this facility will hold. So, like I said, I did not have alligator Alcatraz on the bingo card, but here we are.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I think this is I 100% agree with you that this is a great way, a great addition to the immigration policy. And yeah, definitely better to be sending people to alligator Alcatraz than it is to be busing them around to places in the country, even if you are, clearly making a valid political point that I agree with. I'd still rather than be at alligator Alcatraz than Martha's Vineyard. I totally agree.
Exactly. And now we have this big, beautiful bill. I just saw that it passed the Senate. What was that, yesterday?
Yeah,
and now it's going back to the House. There's a couple revisions. And one of the revisions, Tony, I'd like to talk about. And I'm
please.
really glad that the Senate looked into this and they revised this out of the big, beautiful bill. Because this was one of my major concerns. A couple things. Number one was, and I don't know if you spoke about this on your show previously, forgive me if this is something that you've already said, but it was the 10-year ban on AI. So states and local governments would be barred from enforcing any kind of AI related regulations for 10 years, which we all know how quickly AI is advancing and how I feel like we've kind of hit that Manhattan Project moment, right? Like when the atomic bomb, the first one was dropped, on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. That was like, oh wow, that just changed the game of warfare forever.
Yeah.
I feel like we're at that point right now with AI. A lot of people back in the 90s when the internet came out, they were like Chicken Little, basically. The sky is falling, and this is the end. That was a little overblown. But right now where we're at with AI, I truly do think we're at a very dangerous point here in the timeline with artificial intelligence. Sure, it can be used for good. It can help with our day-to-day lives and all of this. But having that clause originally in the big, beautiful bill about barring state and local governments from enforcing any kind of AI regulations for 10 years, that really did not sit well with me. So I am glad the Senate looked at that and they revised it out of the big, beautiful bill before it goes back.
We have talked about that, and I couldn't agree with you more. I'm glad you brought it up because I think it is a really important thing. I don't trust the federal government being charged of just about anything. And you just did a great job of explaining, with the advancements in AI, 10 years, and then it was negotiated down to 5 years, or at least at least that was being discussed. Like, oh, maybe we'll drop it down to 5 years. Where we're at with AI now, where we will be in 5 or 10 years down the road is so far different than what we're at right now with how quickly AI develops and evolves. Yeah, to take that local control away is terrible. I agree with you 100%.
So the new revision, Tony, just for your listeners, the new revision on that clause, the AI clause in the big, beautiful bill, the Senate proposed that, like you just mentioned, reducing the moratorium from 10 years to 5 years and adding exemptions for state laws addressing child safety, child sexual abuse material, rights of privacy, unauthorized use of a person's name, image, or likeliness. These are all just common sense things that would have gone through if it wasn't for that revision in the Senate. So that is very that puts my mind at ease a little bit. The one other thing I'm not crazy about too in the big, beautiful bill is the sale of public lands to develop whether it's housing or oil, things like that. That's another part of the big, beautiful bill that I'm not crazy about. In fact, I don't like it at all. Overall, though, just going through this, I'd give it a C+. I'm not thrilled with it, but at the same time, there's certainly worse things like the Build Back Better bill under the Biden administration. So I know Trump is very headstrong in getting this pushed through. I've gotten about 10 texts in the last 24 hours. Hey, from President Trump, urge your local congressperson to put this through. So yeah, he's had a good week as far as the Alligator Alcatraz, and now it looks like this big beautiful bill will go to his desk before the 4th of July, which he stated several times.
That's what I was gonna. Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you if you think that's gonna happen, because obviously there's still some pushback by some in the House, and this was very strategically a very smart thing to do, because there's a lot of critical stuff in the big beautiful bill. Making permanent the Trump tax cuts is hugely important to our future. Boosting spending for the military and boosting spending for border security. I mean, these are vital things that are in that bill. But we're also massively raising the debt ceiling, and you brought up the sale of property to foreign lands. There's still some things in there that Republicans in the House are not thrilled with. Do you think at the end of the day, in the next couple of days, do you think ultimately it does get across the finish line into the president's desk?
I do. I definitely think it will. And I'll tell you right now, the biggest critic in all of this is Elon Musk. He's been just having a firestorm on Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
To the point, I mean, really going for the jugular here, talking about how it is going to increase the debt, which, let's be honest, he's right. It is going to increase the debt. This is a massive bill, massive spending, which really worries myself and people of my age, because I have seen, Tony, just since 2020. I mean, we've seen the printing press there at the Federal Reserve is just printing money like it's monopoly money. And I've seen in the last 5 years, we all have, the value of the dollar is just continuing to decline. And that worries me in the long run. What is, I saw a McChicken at McDonald's in 2020 go from $1.09 to about $2.19 just in the last 5 years. What's it going to look like when I'm 60, 70 years old? Is it going to be, $15 for a cheeseburger at McDonald's? That it does worry me, because unless you can't, we're not backed by the gold standard anymore. Nixon took us off that back in 1971. So the USD isn't actually tied to anything, which means the Federal Reserve can just print USD at will. And that's what they've been doing. So it does concern me. Now, I will say, and I don't know how many of your listeners have Bitcoin or any kind of crypto. It's good for Bitcoin, because I've been buying Bitcoin for years. It's the hedge against inflation, in my opinion. But as far as just the regular USD, the more they print, the buying power obviously is going to go down and down. And in the long run, that is something that is extremely concerning. So I do share that sentiment with Elon Musk.
Danny Define, we are almost out of time here, and we definitely going to keep an eye on how this wraps up this week, and if Republican leadership is able to get that big beautiful bill across the finish line. But real quick, we only got about a minute left. We'll end where we started. I just read this just now. A Florida representative, and I didn't see the name. Apparently, the new nickname of Alligator Alcatraz is the Croc. What do you think?
The Croc. Well, that sounds like
I just saw it flash up across the screen. It said Florida representative nicknames Alligator Alcatraz, which is already a nickname, the Croc.
Well, here's the thing: the alligators might be offended by that, Tony, because there's a big difference.
We'll have to check.
And crocodiles.
That's a good point.
Give the alligators their flowers down there, right?
The gator.
The crocodiles are hanging out over in Africa, in the Nile River in Egypt. This is the Alligator Alcatraz. Baby.
Great.
I like that name.
Yeah, great point. Great stuff. Danny Define, thank you for your time as always, buddy. We'll talk to you again soon. Have a great rest of your day.
Have a wonderful 4th of July.
Yeah, back at you. All right, we are going to open up Close's cabinet in just a moment with special guest J.C. Corcoran next on Colombo and Company.
Jamie Allman here for O'Fallon Family Floors. Experience the passion. Oh, yeah. You can go in and see the best variety, the best pricing, the best quality, the best personalized service right there off of Highway K in O'Fallon, or you can have the store come to you. Oh, yeah. Brian and his team take great pride in running a fantastic flooring outlet, and you can get their 5-star ratings right there on Google. Just check it out. It's O'Fallon Family Floors, O'FallonFamilyFloors.com.
News Talk STL is proud to have Doug Voss of Safe Money Radio as part of our lineup each week. Doug has been a staple on the St. Louis radio airways for many years as one of the leading financial experts in the area. You can now hear Doug and Safe Money Radio 2 times every weekend on News Talk STL. But in case you miss anything, you can check it all out at DougVossSafeMoneyRadio.com. You could also reach Doug at 844-6766. That's 844-676-7233.
Doug Voss is a registered representative. Securities offered through DHL Securities, LLLP, member FINRA and SIPC.
Hey, it's Vic Porcelli here with our great friend Chris Cooper from Serenity Wealth Management. Hi, Chris.
How are you, Vic?
I don't want to put anybody else down, but when you go up and visit you at Serenity Wealth, your place looks like home.
So a lot of financial advisory offices, they have, the big mahogany desk or the big marble entryways and things like that. The stock market channel on the TV when you walk in the door, right? That doesn't really drive a good conversation. Good financial guidance and advice starts with a good conversation. People are nervous. People are afraid to talk about finances, right? And so you can see a little standoffish. Well, my objective is to try to have a good casual conversation. By having those conversations about life, goals, objectives, it's what makes me understand what our financials are supposed to fund.
So if somebody does want to have a good conversation, how do they do that? How do they find you?
Our website is the best way to do that because you can get all the information you need, understand where we are, get a little bit more information, all that. SerenityWealthNow.com.
Reach out to Chris and Stacy today at SerenityWealthNow.com.
Investment advice offered through Fortis Capital Advisors, LLC. KLGY HD3 Clayton, K270BW Bellefontaine, KNBS Bowling Green. This is News Talk STL at 1019, 94.1, and always streaming at newstalkstl.com.
Breaking news this hour from townhall.com. I'm John Scott. House Speaker Mike Johnson vowed to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill by Independence Day, hours after the Senate passed the measure. More details from Bernie Bennett.
In a post on X, the speaker joined several other lawmakers in issuing a statement detailing the plan. He wrote, quote, "The House will work quickly to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill that enacts President Trump's full America First agenda by the 4th of July. The American people gave us a clear mandate, and after 4 years of Democrat failure, we intend to deliver without delay." The Senate passed the measure after an intense 24-hour vote-a-rama. Lawmakers pulled an all-nighter to iron out the details of the bill. Getting the bill passed in the lower chamber might be more of a challenge, given Republicans' narrow margin. Bernie Bennett on Capitol Hill.
Also at townhall.com, Ukraine moving forward with plans for joint weapons production with allies, while the U.S. halts some arms shipments that had promised to help Kyiv fight off Russia's invasion. Ukraine warned of potential consequences of that U.S. decision. The decision has increased pressure on European nations to support Ukraine militarily. President Trump and media giant Paramount reached a settlement over an edited 60 Minutes interview during the last month of the election on 60 Minutes.
Paramount has agreed to pay $16 million to settle President Donald Trump's lawsuit over the editing of a CBS 60 Minutes October interview with then Vice President Kamala Harris. Paramount says the money will go to Trump's future presidential library, not Trump himself, and that the settlement does not involve an apology. But Paramount has agreed that 60 Minutes will release transcripts of future interviews with presidential candidates, subject to redactions as required for legal and national security concerns. I'm Donna Waters.
The stocks finished mixed. The Dow dropped 10 points. The Nasdaq was up 190 points. More at townhall.com.
If you're living with pain, see how Relief Factor can help.
I'm an artist and I'm in my studio. I listen to the radio all day. I'm hearing the ads about Relief Factor and I've got pain in my neck and it's getting worse. And I'm thinking, well, I'm going to go ahead and order this. 2 weeks later, I've got much better range of motion. If you're experiencing pain at a certain point in life, I would get Relief Factor.
Fight pain naturally with Relief Factor. Go to relieffactor.com and get your 3-week quick start today. Only $19.95.
Dr. Howard D.C., founder of Balance of Nature and formulator of the fruits and veggies and fiber and spice supplements, has teamed up with veterinarian Dr. Jake to create Dr. Fido's Dog Food Topper, a tasty, nutritious way to enrich your dog's meals. Just scoop, sprinkle, and stir. Call 888-388-7297 or go to drfidos.com, drphytos.com. And for a limited time, order now and receive a 10% discount with our money-back guarantee by using promo code BALANCE.
From the Michaels Flooring Outlet Weather Center.
Should be a nice evening, a little on the warm side, but not overly muggy. The low temperatures overnight dipping down into the upper 60s to near 70 degrees in the metro area. Sunshine again tomorrow. A little bit more humid, a little warmer, high up to about 92, the heat index 94. On the 4th of July, our high temperature will make it up to about 94 degrees with a heat index near 99. And for now, it looks like we don't expect any rain. I'm KMOV First Alert meteorologist Kent Earhart.
This hour of News Talk STL is brought to you by Rodney and Jen Wallner and the entire Wallner home selling team at Berkshire Hathaway. Call them today at 314-810-SOLD. 314-810-SOLD.
Fox News commentary.
The big, beautiful bill is on track for passage, even though the usual suspects are decrying the Medicaid cuts while simultaneously shrieking about the debt and the deficit. I'm Tommy Lahren. More next.
Sponsored by AxeCap Ventures. America, listen up. Gold prices are breaking records. With inflation raging and central banks hoarding, every American should own gold. And like President Trump said, whoever holds the gold makes the rules. AxeCap Ventures owns one of Nevada's largest undeveloped gold deposits and trades for pennies on the dollar. This could be your way to ride the gold boom. AxeCap trades under GARLF on the OTC. Visit axecapventures.ca today.
Big, beautiful bill isn't perfect. Good luck getting a perfect bill out of this Congress or any Congress. But the most important thing this bill does is fund border enforcement and deportations. And I realize the Medicaid stuff is in the weeds for a lot of us, but let me just say this. There's no reason hardworking Americans should be endlessly subsidizing able-bodied adults who choose not to work or work hard. It's also worth noting this bill doesn't cut Medicaid. Medicaid has ballooned into such a scam-ridden money laundering enterprise that these so-called cuts just cut down on that. Medicaid growth still is and has been outpacing inflation. The BBB cuts down on the growth of Medicaid. I understand politicians don't like to be charged with cutting anything, but it's worth noting these programs are going to go broke if something doesn't change. I'm Tommy Lahren, and you can watch my show, Tommy Lahren is Fearless, at Outkick.com.
All the information I need on the drive to work.
Mike Ferguson in the morning. I keep it on throughout the day, whether it's local, national, or something big that's happening overseas.
News, analysis, and opinion.
St. Louis is #1 for conservative talk.
News Talk STL.
Won't you listen? When I first met you.
Welcome back to Colombo and Company on 101.9 News Talk STL. 3 o'clock Wednesday afternoon means it is time to have a little fun and open up Close's Cabinet, brought to you by Weber Chevrolet and the Weber Automotive Group. Mark Close from KC95 unable to join us this week, so we have a special guest for Close's Cabinet, and that is JC Corcoran from the JC's Wayback Machine, which you can hear every Saturday night, 6 p.m. here on News Talk STL. JC, thanks for your time this afternoon, buddy. How are you?
What a gig Close has. He's been getting away with murder like this for decades. Name a segment after me, and then I'll not
show up. Yeah.
Yeah. Mark, we've been on to you for a long time, a very, very long time.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, he's one of the most interesting humans, and I've said this for a very long time. The Mark Close, and we've talked about this on the air, so I'm not talking behind his back or anything. The Mark Close identity that he developed over the years on rock radio and on St. Louis radio in general.
These are very interesting euphemisms you're applying here.
Yes.
It's like you won't come right out and say he's a slug.
Yeah. He's a very complicated man. There's a lot going on there with Mark Close.
You got to remember, I did a morning show with him for 2 years.
Yeah.
When we were on KLOU back in the day. And by the way, my voice sounds a little funny because I had an epidural earlier this week. It's one of those things where they shoot steroids into your spine so that you don't go around walking like Ratso Rizzo and or Anthony Rizzo for that matter, any of the Rizzos. Rizzo from what was her name from Greece? All right, Rizzo's for 400. But anyhow, so I got the shot, and one of the things when they shoot steroids in your back, it messes up your voice, and for about a week you sound so I sound like Rex Davis. A reference wasted on the young Tony Colombo.
Well, thank you for fighting through the epidural. I've heard that I've heard that those can be pretty rough procedures, but you sound great, buddy.
They're not fun. By the way, I think I frightened your young producer Ashlyn because she called to to get me on hold, get me set up here, get ready to go, and I just assumed it was one of you guys. And so I answered the phone like Paul Harvey. Hello, Americans. And she was like, is this JC Corcoran? And I was like, I had to explain to her that this is what goes on in this business. I'm sorry, Ashlyn. A young girl of 28 from SIUE.
Yeah, Ashlyn's been absolutely fantastic filling in for the great Stel Ponticus, who actually is going to join us on the show tomorrow at 2:40. So we'll get to check in with Stel. He's been out a little bit dealing with some stuff, and he's going to check in with us.
I'm surprised they don't have, the Greeks got special everything.
Yeah, right.
They got Greek Easter. I used to have my college roommate's name was John Sarpalis, and he was the first Greek person I ever knew. And he said, I'm going home for the weekend. I go, what for? He goes, well, it's Greek Easter. I'm like, what the hell is Greek Easter? And it's like, Jesus didn't do a separate Sunday for you guys where he got up and pushed the rock out of the way.
He rose again, yeah.
And so now here's all for the Greeks. It's like, what are you talking about? Greek Easter? Well, it turns out it has something to do with their calendar. So I'm surprised that Stel doesn't have his own Greek 4th of July.
Yeah,
that happens in the middle of August.
Right. Well, we'll find out tomorrow when we talk to Stel.
Then again, Tony, I'm doing my 4th of July way back special on the 5th of July. So there
you go. I want to talk to you about that. Also, you mentioned this when I was asking you, trying to the very long negotiations to try to get JC to fill in for Mark today. You mentioned, I think this is awesome. I didn't realize this. It's the 38th anniversary of the Mets are pond scum flyover situation.
Yeah.
That is that is like a core memory of my childhood. And I grew up I was a kid in the 80s, a teenager and young adult in the 90s, and huge Cardinals fan, obviously. And that the Mets are pond scum, and that rivalry and that whole thing with the Cardinals and the Mets in the mid 80s was just huge for me.
Funny, I'd only been in town about 3 years.
Yeah.
This is back in 1987. Yeah. I've been in town about 3 years. And, one of the first things you pick up back then, especially, it's not the same anymore, but it was back then, this incredible rivalry between the Cardinals and the Mets.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more than a rivalry. The two teams did not like one another.
No.
The fans didn't like one another.
Yeah.
I remember my first trip to Shea Stadium. I was walking around and it looked like everybody in the ballpark that night had just been paroled that afternoon. That's what the whole place looked like. And so then, they would send those monkeys into St. Louis to try to buy up all the seats. So anyhow, I was trying to figure out some sort of way to encapsulize or if that's a word, encapsulate.
Yeah.
SAT word of the day. So anyhow, I was, I don't know, I was just trying to figure out some way to sort of tap into the whole thing. And I was watching an episode of Cheers. And they were trying to set Shelley Long's character up with a blind date, and it didn't go well. And she referred to the guy as pond scum. And I thought to myself, that's pretty good. That's pretty degrading. So let's go ahead and start using that. So I'm like, the Mets are pond scum, the Mets are pond scum. A couple of months later, if you remember back in the old late night with David Letterman days, on Friday night, they would answer viewer mail on Friday night. And lo and behold, some guy by the name of Gary Brown from St. Louis writes a letter to Dave, something about his eyebrows or something, and then says, P.S., the Mets are pond scum. Well, the place starts booing. I can't believe that they're using this on national TV. The Mets are pond scum. And Dave brings out these charts and graphs comparing the Mets to pond scum. And I had that tape on the air the following Monday morning. And then it just mushroomed into this whole thing. We ended up selling about 40,000 the Mets are Pond Scum t-shirts.
Wow.
Now, the problem is Kathy Kelly, who was our promotion director at the time, the daughter of the late Dan Kelly, who introduced St. Louis Blues hockey to this region many, many moons ago. Kathy says, why don't we have an airplane or something, drag a banner over the ballpark when the Mets are in town that says JC says the Mets are Pond Scum. Sounded like a good idea. So we did. And now Tom Herr is at bat in the bottom of the first inning. And all of a sudden there's 50,000 people cheering. Now, if you remember, the old Busch Stadium had a rim around it. So the announcers are all sitting there, and all they know is 50,000 people now, for no reason whatsoever, are cheering wildly. And there's just dead air. All you can hear is the crowd. The announcers are saying nothing. Excuse me. And finally, from around the rim, Alan Roboski, who was doing the color commentary at the time, puts the field glasses up in the air and looks and sees it. Now he starts laughing because then he informs Ken Wilson, the play-by-play guy for the Cards Cable Network.
Yeah.
It's a message from J.C. Corcoran. So Mets are Pond Scum. All right. Well, now the place is cheering wildly. Tom Herr steps out of the batter's box. He's looking up in the air like, what in the hell is going on? About 15 minutes later, I receive a tap on the shoulder. It is from Nancy McElroy, the media liaison for the St. Louis Cardinals, who says, Dal would like to see you in his office. Dal being Cardinals general manager, the equivalent of John Mozeliak now. Dal Maxfield. So now I am escorted into the bowels of Busch Stadium. Game's going on, and I come walking in, and there's Dal Maxfield sitting behind his desk with like lava coming out of his ears. JC, damn it, I just had to go to the Mets dugout and apologize to the whole team. And blah, 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 blah. Yeah. And he's just going on and on and on about what a lout I am. We appreciate your enthusiasm, but you can't do stuff like this. Well, you know, I was not thrown out of the ballpark. You know, went back to my seat.
Well, as you're telling that story, and you know, you did get reprimanded a little bit, but that is that I love that, because that's old school sports rivalry. Teams taking, you know, shots at each other, fans taking shots at each other, but in a serious way, like when it comes to supporting your team, but you know, not in like a life-threatening serious way that we
were in the trenches.
Exactly. It's what's so cool. Warfare. Exactly. Super cool stuff. You would never see that today. You would never see that today.
Stations.
Yeah.
Radio stations used to compete
Absolutely.
with each other that same way.
Oh yeah.
I worked in Buffalo, and my morning show partner went over, and there was an event, a public event, where a lot of radio stations were involved, and he went over there with a knife and poked the tires out of the WPHT van. I witnessed it myself. This was the sort of stuff that used to go on back in the day.
Oh yeah.
And now you don't have any fun anymore.
No.
Everybody's, you know, the problem is everybody keeps buying one another up, and you know, one day your boss turns out to be a rival, or your rival turns out to be your boss.
And in that situation,
so you can't be careful. And this is why I am guesting on Mark's spot rather than having my own.
Well, but it's not even that a radio station wouldn't do it anymore. Major League Baseball would have a conniption.
No.
The Cardinal, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, we live just in a different time, and like. Yep. And that is in that's harmless. I'm not saying like, oh, back in the good old days when you could slug a guy in the nose because you didn't like the cut of his jib. You know, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just, that was harmless sports fun, and that would create such a ruckus today if you attempted.
Tony, this thing has popped up all over the place. You know, it even popped up on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Oh wow!
About 20 years ago, some guy
from
New York was competing, and Regis was asking him. He's like, "Well, you know, working at WashU in St. Louis, says, oh, you can see the Mets play when they come to town." He goes, "Yeah, but then I have to put up with the Mets or Pond Scum." And Regis is like, "The Mets are Pond Scum? What are you talking about?" and you know, and it's been in books, it's been on TV shows. Keith Olbermann every once in a while used to talk about it. when he was doing Fox Sports.
Yeah.
The thing just took on a life of its own.
No, yeah, it's still like it's still remembered to this day. That's why I wanted to bring it up. I thought that was super cool to learn that.
You know what people don't want to bring up? They don't want to bring up that it was 40 years ago this weekend that Back to the Future was released.
Oh yeah, yeah.
People are like, no way, was that 40 years ago? Stop talking.
No, that's unbelievable. When we were talking about that during those rigorous negotiations as well, that blew my both of those things. The fact that the Metzer-Ponscombe thing is 38 years old and Back to the Future is 40 years old, but
40 years old.
Yeah, talk about there's another thing, Back to the Future, that stands the test of time.
Well, you know,
no pun intended.
Quentin Tarantino, right? Quentin Tarantino referred to it as a perfect movie, and I think I got to agree with him. You know, I don't see a lot that I would change in that movie. However, if you ever get a chance, and you can Google this, Google John Mulaney and his take on Back to the Future. It is one of the funniest things I have ever seen in my life, because he basically talks about a nice family movie here. You know, you bring kids because near the end of the movie, the bad guy is going to try to rape your mother. So it's an interesting take. But Google John Mulaney Back to the Future, and I guarantee you'll be forwarding it to everybody you know.
That's hilarious. And you know that you know how powerful and how much that movie is still remembered. A good friend of ours, one of our regular guests and one of our advertisers, Jonathan Heslop, who is with Rockwood Lump Charcoal and Capriotti Sandwich Shop, he owns a DeLorean, that DeLorean,
Whoa.
that make and model, and he will bring it to events, and he's driven it here to the radio station before.
He still has it.
And still drives it. It was here. It was in the parking lot of this radio station just a couple of months ago, just when he drove in for like an interview. He was just driving it.
Well, I remember at the screening, which was at the old Kenrick on Watson Road. And because I remember I did the introduction for the thing, and they had a DeLorean in the parking lot. I don't know where it came from, but there it was. And we had Michael J. Fox, but he did a movie called Doc Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
And they brought him into St. Louis, and we had him at the old KSD property there on Corporate Square in Creve Coeur. And because the movie had a medical theme, we invited all these medical people in, and we had gurney races in the parking lot with Michael J. Fox live right there in the parking lot. He did not want to participate in it. We were really surprised because he seemed like, a really fun guy, but he didn't want to. Well, we come to find out it's maybe 2 or 3 years later that almost at exactly that same time is when he got diagnosed for the very first time with Parkinson's.
Wow.
So his decision not to participate may have had something to do with that. But, it's funny because I was just talking to Mike Bush a couple of weeks ago, and he told me that he ran into Michael J. Fox at some sort of a charitable foundation of some sort. I think it was in Los Angeles. Might have had something to do with the MDA telethon or something. And he said he went up to him and he said, I'm like, oh, you don't know me or anything, but I'm from St. Louis, and I just want to tell you that I participated in a thing in St. Louis with you. And he said Michael J. Fox just shouted out, gurney races, right? So he remembered it.
That's cool.
And this was, I think, 1990 or 1991. And he remembered it from like 35 years ago.
Wow.
He has apparently fond memories of St. Louis.
That's fantastic. Talking to JC Corcoran, JC's Wayback Machine this Saturday, every Saturday, 6 p.m. here on News Talk STL.
Doing our big patriotic show, our big 4th of July theme.
Yeah.
Every song we play, plus we have some comedy bits. Great thing from Robin Williams. Lots of fun stuff. A lot of David Spade from Joe Dirt and everything. You're going to sit there and tell me, owning a fireworks stand, you don't have one whistling kitty chaser? So we have a lot of that stuff is going to be injected into the fray. But all the songs that are about America, the USA, we're going to throw in some protest songs, a couple of things that maybe you haven't heard in a long time. That's sort of what we specialize in.
Yeah.
So 3 hours of all of that. Saturday night, 6 till 9, JC's Wayback Machine, presented by the Weber Automotive Group.
Yeah, absolutely. It also happens on the same day. We started this segment with a little Black Sabbath. Also on Saturday is Black Sabbath. We'll see if this is true. How many final concerts and retirement tours and, all those things that we have seen from rock bands over the years. But this Saturday, supposedly supposed to be Black Sabbath's final show ever. Also, they are in the news. We decided to play them to start the segment here for a couple of reasons. That and on the heels of this big final show, Ozzy Osbourne just announced the release of his new makeup line. Okay. What a strange man and a strange life. One of the most controversial big names in rock and roll history that went on to become kind of a punchline during his reality show days in more recent years, and now he's getting apparently into the beauty industry. What a strange journey.
That was there's a word for that. That's called a stretch. Because even Sharon Osbourne would have trouble pulling that off at this point.
Yeah. What do you think about the chances of this actually being their last tour? And then just in general, whenever comes through St. Louis, goes all over the country every year, there seems to be some farewell tour happening.
Well, we've had these,
and then they come back 2 years later. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had these alleged farewell tours. The difference now, though, is that everybody really is getting too old to go out there and continue. I mean, Paul Simon was on television last week, and I love Paul Simon, but I mean, he came out looking like, Perry Como in Branson. And, it was really sort of sad. And there's people that I just won't go to see anymore because I don't want to remember them that way. I just don't want to remember them that way. I want to remember, when I saw them when they were cooking. I won't go see Heart again. I'm sorry. I feel terrible for Ann Wilson. I'm a huge Heart fan, but I'm sorry. I cannot go to a concert and see somebody doing Barracuda from a wheelchair.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. I'm sorry. There is a point where you have to say, that's it. It's time to sit down. Or maybe you just do acoustic stuff or something like that. But don't bring 20,000 people into an arena and have them wheel you out in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And then try to do kick it out. It doesn't work.
There's definitely a line there. And it's interesting. We were actually talking a little bit about this exact thing last week with Mark, the guy that you're filling in for right now.
The guy that doesn't show up for his own
the guy
segment?
didn't. Yeah, that's the one. He's the one. There was a viral clip of AC/DC, of a recent AC/DC show that was going all over TikTok and in the social medias. And all these people were being critical of AC/DC, saying it's time to hang it up. In the clip, Brian Johnson, just doesn't sound great. And Angus Young is still dressing like a schoolboy, but I don't know if you've seen Angus Young recently. The hair is bright white, and he is definitely looking his age. And for me, it's kind of because I agree with you. I saw BB King several years ago, a couple years before he passed. And, he wasn't even able to walk. They just kind of helped him out to the stage. He sat down, he played. There was some technical problems on top of it. It just was like, it kind of like you said, you don't want to see a legend in that condition and have that in your mind. But at the same time, I don't need you to sound like you sounded in your 20s and 30s. I don't need you to be at your peak if you're a
what they ought to do? They ought to do, Tony? It's the same thing they do for baseball. They ought to have like an old timers game. It's like, look, you can't play anymore every day. You're not a professional Major League Baseball player anymore. But once a year, we're going to do a special event on Saturday afternoon. You come out for the old timers game, and they wheel and will.
Well, maybe there's a line for even that. Maybe sometimes you just are done, but
maybe you were
maybe
right
not the wheelchair part, but no, I get what you're saying. And if I can see, REM, a band that I absolutely love, that has retired. If I could see them again and they still sound good, They don't have to sound, they don't have to sound as good as they did in 1992. But, if they still sound good and I could watch, get that experience one more time, then I am all for it. I don't expect them to be at 100%. But
the key to that is getting a really, really large choir to sing behind you.
Right. Yes.
A lot of backup singers.
Yeah, exactly. Or just backup track and try not to get caught like Milli Vanilli. JC, before we run out of time, you talked about this week's show, the big 4th of July celebration, but in general, for folks that have not had a chance to check out or just learning about the Wayback Machine, new show here on News Talk STL every Saturday night, 6 to 9 p.m. with JC Corcoran. Just tell folks what they can expect and why they should.
Well, the big corporations with their big corporate radio stations and their 25 minutes of commercials every hour of every day, and their playlists that are whittled down to about 3 or 350 songs. So, tremendous songs don't get played on the radio in St. Louis anymore. So that's what we do. We pick up at like 351. So, I mean, really, when's the last time you heard Take Me to the River by the Talking Heads, or Somebody's Baby by Jackson Brown, Shelter from the Storm by Bob Dylan, a song like All the Young Girls Love Alice by Elton John. These are all the songs we play. These are tremendous songs. You go to an Elton John concert and you hear those first couple of beats of All the Young Girls Love Alice, and people rise to their feet because they know the song, they love the song, but that song doesn't get played on the radio and hasn't for decades. So what we do is we revive all of those songs, and along with that, we also pump in a lot of old commercials and old news stories and stuff like that. It is not a classics show. There's enough of those damn things. These are good songs that everybody knows, everybody likes, but just don't get played on the radio anymore. But we fix that. We do a Beatles feature, a Motown feature, and everybody's favorite feature, which really is just an excuse to play an oldie. Songs grandma used to make out to. So, that's what we do. And we roll that for 3 hours on Saturday night, 6 to 9, presented by the Weber Automotive Group. And so far, we're having a good time. I've been doing it for 2 months now. They haven't fired me yet.
It is an absolute awesome way to spend your Saturday evening with that as your background, the Wayback Machine. JC's
Especially this week, for people getting ready for fireworks, and you got 3 hours of, USA America type songs.
I love
and everything. I think you'll really get off on it. Perfect, backyard barbecue or swimming pool stuff leading up to the big fireworks shows.
JC, I'm going to make sure to tell Mark how much better of a job.
Show up next week.
Well, no, how much better of a job you did than he normally does. What an improvement this segment was with you here, JC. Really appreciate your time, my friend, and we'll be tuned in Saturday, 6 p.m. for JC's Wayback Machine. And we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks so much, JC.
Happy 4th of July.
Yeah,
Tony.
back at you.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks for your time. As JC mentioned, also the Wayback Machine and this segment, Closest Cabinet, all brought to you by Weber Chevrolet and the Weber Automotive Group. If you're looking for a new vehicle, check out one of the local Weber dealerships. Weber Chevrolet, you've got Creve Coeur in Missouri, Granite City, and Columbia in Illinois, and of course also Weber Ford there in Granite City. Weber Chevrolet has been in the St. Louis area for nearly 125 years, and you don't stick around in the same community for that long if you're not doing right by your customer. Generations of St. Louisans have trusted Weber Chevrolet, including our family. So if you're looking for a new vehicle, check out everything that's happening at the Weber Chevrolet dealerships by going to weberchevrolet.com. All right, before we hand things off to the Tim Jones and Chris Arp show, gotta get you back into the news. Got a couple more stories want to fill you in on before we hand things off to Tim and Chris, and we will do that next here on Colombo and Company.
Oh, you get me on. Oh, yeah.
For podcasts, articles, and more, find us on newstalkstl.com. News, analysis, opinion.
They're literally taking the Constitution and putting it in a paper shredder.
News Talk STL.
New Creation Dental Care and Dr. Matt Boscia has been providing the Colombo family's dental providing for our family's dental needs for years, and I can't recommend them enough. If you're looking for a new dentist for yourself or your family, go to newcreationdentalcare.com. Check out all the great services, all the things that Dr. Boscia and his team can do for you and your family, including some advanced procedures that you don't find in other dentist offices. Especially, one of the things with Dr. Boscia is you're avoiding corporate dentistry. You have that personal relationship with the dentist, with Dr. Boscia and his staff. They know you, you know them. Just creates such a much better experience. And then talk about all the great services they offer, like the all-on-4 full arch implant procedure. This is full mouth restoration that can give you back your smile in as little as 1 day. And you can get it done right there in the office with the team, with the doctor that you know and trust. There are so many people that have suffered with chipped teeth, broken teeth, poor fitting dentures. And, in the past, you could have looked into this, and it's, wildly expensive and something that takes, multiple visits in a very long period of time. It's in many cases, this is still a very serious situation, but with the advancements in technology and what Dr. Boscia can do right there in the office with the all-on-4 procedure, it's just absolutely amazing, and it can change lives. It has changed lives. You can see some amazing smile makeovers, learn more about the all-on-4 procedure, and see everything that Dr. Boscia can do for you and your family right now just by going to newcreationdentalcare.com.
John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call the John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Bill has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Bill.
This is Larry Connor's commentary on News Talk STL.
This is a true story of a 21-year-old member of Hamas who converted from Islam to Christianity, baptized 4 years later. Never let others know, fearing family and relatives might be killed. This is the story of Hussein Youssef. His father was one of the co-founders of Hamas. He was raised to hate and fight the Jews. At age 5 or 6, he was raped by another Muslim, but never told anyone, fearing he would suffer an honor killing. He'd be put to death because he had been defiled. Often honor killings happen in the Islam religion. Some have occurred in the U.S., maybe when a Muslim girl dates a Christian, a Jew, anyone other than a Muslim. 2007, Youssef got out of the West Bank and came to America, where he declared his father's religion, Hamas, was wrong. He had seen how Hamas tortured Jewish prisoners, not for intel, but just to torture them. And recently he said, there is no difference between the PLO and Hamas. The PLO is made up of various tribes. And he said if they didn't have the Jews to hate, they would fight each other. Is that true? He would know.
Get more Larry Connors on Larry Connors USA.
Tonight at 6 on News Talk STL.
Here's great news. Napoli Kirkwood is now open. So that means fine dining right in the heart of Kirkwood. So you have the original Cafe Napoli in downtown Clayton, Napoli 2, Town and Country, Napoli 3 on the streets of St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C, plus Napoli Brothers Pasta and Pizza in the Chesterfield Valley. All of those locations, and now adding Napoli Kirkwood. What a great place to dine. Napoli Kirkwood, now open.
Do you own a timeshare? Well, face the facts. You made a mistake. You made a bad purchase. A timeshare is not an investment. It's a money pit that continues forever. If you use your timeshare, that's great. But if you don't, and you want to legally get out of your contract, call my friends right now at the Timeshare Exit Hotline. They're an experienced team of lawyers who help good people like you get out of a timeshare contract that they just don't want. Don't throw away your money on maintenance fees. Use it for things you really want. We can help you end your timeshare contract and stop the money drain immediately. If you're ready to move on with your timeshare, call our team right now.
Cancel your timeshare now with this free call. 800-524-1641. 800-524-1641. 800-524-1641. That's 800-524-1641.
Hey, if you're 50 or older, you do not want to take any risk with your money. In fact, you want Leslie Consulting. My friend Bob Leslie can show you a gain and retain plan. Means that you never lose. Plus, you get up to a 20% bonus on day one. Leslie Consulting, a leader in brokerage and risk management. 314-721-0066. LeslieConsulting.com.
On the next
Larry Connors USA.
Trump's big, beautiful bill gets through the Senate, back to the House. How fast can they get it to his desk?
Larry Connors USA. Now, weeknights 6 until 8 on News Talk STL.
Welcome back to Colombo and Company on 101.9 News Talk STL. I mentioned earlier that there's a report out about the experience on the Mexican side of the southern border. Mexican business owners talk about the situation at the border under the Trump administration. Quote, drug trafficking has been controlled a lot. There's barely any now. It's not like it used to be, said one Mexican native who owns a photography business right outside the walkable entry point into Mexico. A restaurant owner near the border said, quote, we've gone through very tough times before, although right now, this past year, there's been some calm. In earlier times, we had a lot of problems. When asked about how border security updates under President Trump have affected the area, various residents pointed out the construction of local shelters that were created in anticipation of mass deportations and how they're basically just sitting there empty and being unused. Border City Mayor Juan Francisco echoed that statement expressed by several community members in a recent interview, saying, quote, we receive 60 migrants on average, so nothing to do with the number we expected and all the infrastructure we prepared. Another food vendor there said, quote, there aren't as many people wanting to cross the border anymore. There used to be a lot, but things have calmed down a lot, unquote. So I think, as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to talk about that because I think it's very interesting and insightful to hear, the impact on the other side of the border and a lot of the positives that are happening there as well as they are here in the United States. We had a packed show today. If you missed any of it, make sure you're subscribed to our podcast. We put the show out as a podcast right after we get off the air every day on basically every podcast platform. So wherever your favorite place to get podcasts is, just make sure you're subscribed to Colombo and Company. Had a great conversation with Missouri political insider Rodney Boyd earlier, News Talk STL contributor Danny Define, and just a few moments ago with JC Corcoran, host of JC's Wayback Machine, which you can hear every Saturday night at 6 p.m. here on News Talk STL. Great conversation with all those guys. So make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss anything that happens on the show. We will be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. In the meantime, keep it here for the O'Reilly Report next, then the Tim Jones and Chris Arp Show.
Summer in St. Louis means one thing: Cardinals baseball. It's more than a game. It's an STL tradition. The crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, the boom of the fireworks. It's the soundtrack to summer for Cardinals Nation. So grab your cap and glove and take